host of our today's session. So today the discussion is structured in three segments. The first segment is the market always buying? Strategy lens. The second segment is discovery and signal intelligence from guesswork to readiness. And third and last segment is referrals, competitive mode by design. So the session is interactive. In the chat window, please say hi and share your location from where you are joining, and drop your questions if you have for our speakers, and tell us about your own experience. And please do not forget to like the event page. Over to you, Vishwendra.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. Is your market always buying? Thanks for making time today because this question sits right where buyer reality collides with how leadership plans and forecasts. Most annual plans, SKOs, and board decks quietly assume one thing, that the market is always buying. But the data tells a different story. At any point in time, only around 5% of buyers are actively in market and ready to move. The other 95% are locked into contracts, fighting other fires, or simply not ready to change anything right now. And here's the kicker: over an entire year, only 20% of your market will be in market. That means 80% won't become buyers for the next 4 years. So, what does this mean for your business? From the buyer's seat, that's just normal life and risk management. From a CEO seat, though most targets, territories, and investments are still set as if everyone is listening and ready in every quarter, in every segment. So today's session is about pulling that assumption apart. We'll look at B2B tech world through two lenses at the same time. First, the buyer's lens, what they are really doing, deciding, and delaying across their buying cycles. Second, the CEO, sales, marketing, and revenue leaders lens, how capital, people, and attention get allocated when only a small slice of the market is actually ready to buy. And we'll use three levers to test whether your operating model respects that reality. First is discovery, second, signal intelligence, and third is referral systems. So this is very much an ask us anything session. As we go, drop your questions into the chat, especially where your bias reality and your internal goals are clearly out of sync. We'll take up these questions during the session, even if you have any insight to any of the conversation that we are having, do share your comments in the chat window. But let me go to my distinguished panel, and I like each of you to introduce yourself briefly and then answer this. What's one belief about is the market always buying did you once defend as a corporate leader, but now realize was completely wrong and that you now help your clients to unlearn? Let's start with Aditi.
Thank you so much, Vishwendra, for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Aditi. After spending about 15 years across corporate and public sector transformation, I've realized something important about how we think of markets. For years, I've genuinely believed and defended the idea that the market is always buying. We build strategies, GTMs, and even leadership narratives around that assumption. But the more I worked closely with the real buyers, especially at high stakes and public facing environments, I saw the gap. The market is not always buying. Markets don't buy, people do. And people buy only when their internal world is shifting. And the mistake wasn't just conceptual, it created waste. Wasted campaigns, wasted energy, wasted pressure on our teams, etc., etc., etc. Today, um, it's not just an unlearning for me, it is unlearning for the people associated around me. So I help others like me unlearn this outdated belief and rebuild revenue motions based on buyer timing, not corporate timing. With that, we'll dive into the session and you all shall learn more from all of us.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you so much. Let me now invite Dean.
Hey, good morning, Vish. And from Atlanta, Georgia, we have to say go dogs. But anyway, I'm a sales growth architect, founder and leader of Sales Growth Imagination. What we do is we help small and medium-sized businesses build sustainable sales models and then help them accelerate growth. Two things that I've seen over the years, and the closer you get to top of any organization, I think we've all related. Everyone always talks about, hey, the most important thing for the company is taking care of their employees and developing those employees and delighting the customers. What you find as you get closer to the top of an organization, that's a bunch of bullshit. What they're really saying is don't miss the number, hit the number. The people, the customers, they'll follow. Whereas I think we all know the reality is it's the opposite. You delight customers, you love your employees, because ultimately, and we just heard the same, relationships matter. And that doesn't matter if it's in global 500, if it's in enterprise or small businesses. People do buy from people. And I think people don't spend enough time nurturing relationships and really earning that trust.
Thank you, Dean. So let me also go to Deepak.
Absolutely. Last but not least, right? So
Yeah.
let me take the 180-degree view on life here. An ex-boss of mine just told me something which I really felt changed my approach in sales. And Dean, I think you'll nod your head when I say this, but you won't nod it initially. Which I believe the market is always buying. The difference is that certain times the market is buying ideas for the future. Sometimes the market is buying a solution for today. You have to sell all the time. What you're positioning, though, is different at that time. So the mindset is that you're always selling. And I know this is something that's very cliched, right? You're always selling, but now what you do is you're selling more of a relationship, as Dean put it. And I think from an Aditi point of view, it'll be more of positioning for the future. You may not be buying today, but I will still treat you with respect. I will show up at your door and I will position. So it's not about more outreach to push an agenda for money today. It's more an outreach to build and continue, because I've wrote it one thing in my career. When times are down and no one is buying because they don't have money, or they put the decision on hold, or they move the budget out, they will remember your presence though, because you were there. And when that money comes back, or when that water rises, hopefully your relationship, as Dean put it, is so solid that you are the first thing that comes to mind when they call you back. And you've given them enough insight and feedback that when the money comes back and when the projects kick off, it is your idea that formed the basis for that RFP or the thought process, which positions you more powerfully, more greatly. So remember, everyone, yes, you're always selling, but you're now selling not for that moment, you're selling for the future, but you're always selling. That's how I would position that, Vish.
Thank you, Deepak, and it's great to see viewpoints from two different horizons. So one is, of course, mentioning Aditi and Dean are on the side that the market is not always buying, while Deepak is saying no, market is always buying, and we should keep selling. So I think that's a great start to get a mixed viewpoint about the topic that we have today. So let's zoom out to the strategic level, and let's begin with the first segment, which is the market always buying when we look at from a strategic perspective. So while I shared initially, if only a small fraction of your market is truly ready in any given quarter, while Deepak, you may disagree that market might be ready every time, but as per the research, which was actually done by, I think, by a university, I forgot the name of the university. I think it was Ashenover Base Institute. But if only a small fraction of your market, which is 5% of market, is truly ready in any given quarter, why do so many organizations still behave as if everyone is in play all the time? And from the buyer side, they are managing frozen budgets, internal politics, compliance, risk. They may have their own budget cycles. Many would not even open a buying cycle this year, regardless of how good your outreach is. So when we look at B2B deals, these deals are normally for horizon of say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? So those, if they bought this year, they may not buy again in the next 3 or 4 years. However, from the CEO side, from the seller's perspective, most planning models still assume a smooth linear demand curve and full market coverage across all territories and segments. And Deepak, as you mentioned, so of course there is a gap we are going to probe in this first segment. And let me have a question for Aditi, because you did mention that the market is not always buying. So when we have a perspective or an attitude that um, the market is always buying, and when we see the research, if only a fraction of your market is truly ready, why do we have budgets, cadences, and leadership narratives assuming everyone is listening right now?
Thank you for the question. See, this happens because we plan for reach, not
Mm,
readiness. Uh, but readiness is not vague. You can actually measure it. And specifically I wanted to create a takeaway from this session for our listeners. And we talk a lot, but if you're able to measure it and take it away and apply it on
mm,
every opportunity or every situation at your workplace, I think it will be very, very helpful for our listeners. With that, I have sort of concretized the readiness indicators, which our teams can use it today in any sector as they may
mm,
be part of. One is that the problem intensity signals say, is the customer experiencing the problem in a way that is painful to them, visible to
mm,
them, or financially risky right now? When the problem becomes urgent, readiness spikes. Second, there could be certain trigger events, like there is a leadership change, there is a budget reset, regulatory changes, system failures, new KPIs, etc., etc. If we track these events, we can definitely predict buying windows.
mm,
Lastly, and this is one of my favorites, is the behavior micro or mini signals. And I would like to take a few examples also very briefly so that everybody is able to get the context. Small behaviors that show timing, asking the how questions. Earlier they asked, what does your platform do, what does your product do? Now they ask, how does this integrate with our claims workflow? The question
mm,
has shifted. This shift is from generic to very operational, is a readiness signal. Then
mm,
we pulling data instead of consuming content. Instead of reading a blog or watching a webinar, they ask, can you share the benchmark for teams of similar sizes? So content definitely is curiosity, but data is decision making, and that will actually help us understand the signaling mechanism even better. Lastly, we loop in our cross functional peers, which is a big
mm,
signal. It's not a mini signal. A lone champion suddenly brings up legal, finance, or IT with a simple line saying, looping in Raj, they'll be a part of the final decision making, etc. Buyers don't call the internal committees unless something is moving. you know
mm,
that I feel, when we bring in or when we are moved by curiosity, there arises consideration. And so why do companies still assume that everyone is listening? Because it is easier to build a calendar than a signal engine. But companies do that. Um, what, but the companies that win now are the ones who ask who is ready this month and not who is in our TAM this month. So this
mm,
shift, um, in the mindset or in terms of the verbiage or terminology, I feel is enough for us to understand the readiness that is there in the market.
Absolutely. I like this statement. It's easy to build a calendar than the
Yeah.
signal intelligence. And
Yeah.
you also mentioned about engagement with the buyer. So if they are, if the buyer pulls you in engagement with their cross-functional team or your cross-functional team, get engaged with buyers. That shows the readiness of the buyer that they are considering your product or your service. Thank you, Aditi, for
Thank
this these insights. Dean, I'll come to you, especially from a perspective of when we look at a go to market and in terms of the execution, whether sales and marketing, and if you look at the business planning, when we have say annual business plan, sales or marketing, they would come with their plan and budget with an increase of say 10 to 20% growth for next year. They keep their the main go to market motions as part of these the calendar or business plan even for next year. But the not that many are asking whether those motions are working for them. So are there any uh, you know are there any sacred cows in the go to market uh, that should be killed tomorrow if like as Aditi mentioned, readiness. So if buyers readiness needs to be assessed, so if we consider that buyers readiness as an operating rule for the business, do you think uh, any GTM motions that has been continued by sales and marketing over 2 years or 3 years, which are actually not, which might be getting them um, visibility but not sales? So do you think such GTM motions should be identified and killed as part of the business rule?
Hey, it's a great question, Vish, and you're touching on something I think we all can relate to. When you think about go to market, marketing and sales should be aligned at the hip, total collaborative. And when I was at corporate early in my career, I saw a disconnect. And I thought that was just in larger companies. As you know, I serve, the small and medium sized space. So anywhere from several $1 million to a couple $100 million companies generally, even though I know you already know I'm working with a couple $2+ billion companies now. But it is amazing the disconnect. And what I will tell you is I think the pressure of performance and or people not performing going backwards, that puts additional pressure. And when I look at sacred cows, I kind of look at it and call it status quo. And I have a good friend in the print world, anyone that ever has seen At the End of the Day with Ray. And this he does a great job with attacking any of the manufacturers or in the print industry. And he always talks about status quo is the killer of all things invented. And I would take that to the sales environment. And when I say that, status quo is the killer of sales growth. And I know, Vish, you follow me on LinkedIn. Deepak, you do. You have probably seen no less than 100 posts from me this year that talks to status quo. And when you break it down, there are some misnomers out there. Right now, no one is or opening emails and or demand gen. I think the last number we talked about, is 0.5% are actually being viewed. That is, if the recipient doesn't know the sender. But it's not like they're jumping in to answer their phone calls either, right? So I think there's this misnomer now that the best way to grow is to do more leads equal more sales. People aren't focused on how do we add the quality into that process. What can we do different, creative? And another one is on the sales side, we've all been there. Deepak, I know you've seen it. It is interesting when people start saying, hey, the bigger pipeline's a better pipeline. Well, 9 times out of 10, there's pressure on sales. It's a bunch of BS put into the pipeline. KPIs are probably not meaningful. People are just trying to go through the motion. So when you think about readiness, I think the qualified opportunities matter, and you got to figure that out, because that can mean something quite different. A lot of times you'll hear the saying, spray and pray outreach still works. It absolutely does not work. We're to a point now where we have to be laser focused, and the world I'm in, and I think you've had the pleasure of actually hosting a show when I had Ben 𝗥𝗃𝗲𝗀 of KnowledgeNet and Drew Williams, a sales playbook builder, right? That in the Avner tool, it's all about how do you connect and add value. And I was on a call with a customer. I was put on the spot, and I was showing them a relationship path, saying, listen, you're trying to get into your largest packaging customer or prospect. They won't even return a call. They can't get out of the dugout, right? So we actually went in to show a connection path, and they wanted me to use my extension of KnowledgeNet. Well, I'm not even in that industry, right? And we pull it up, and I'm looking at a guy that they can't even get to acknowledge them. And I just start laughing because I see a connection to this gentleman that I have through my network. And I start laughing. I'm going, look at the bottom. Look at this guy. Magic is his name. I can't believe this. And they actually stopped me. They said, Dean, you need to put your glasses on, because the name is Michael McClendon, not Magic. I'm like, well, in my fraternity in college and in my wedding, I call my good friend of life Magic. That's his nickname, right? So obviously it's about how do you get that unfair advantage and what can you do different to grow that. But I think most people are in status quo, and right now they are trying to drive tremendously too many activities and not determining what are those effective activities that can make a difference in your business. And that part is critical. But it goes back to the first part we kicked off. People still buy from people, and you need to earn the right for them to trust you.
Yeah. No, I agree with your point that, status quo is something which is very difficult to come out from. And, a lot of sales and marketing teams still believe that spray and pray could be a good way to show activity, especially to the leadership team within their, ecosystem. But at the same time, it may not result. So while they are showing the volume, it may not give them the results that they might be, they might be expected to meet. And that becomes a challenge. But then, the questioning or challenging that status quo is something very challenging. But let me ask Deepak, because Deepak agrees that the market is always buying, and the spray and pray you have made my life little
I'm
trickier,
agreeing with you,
Deepak, because I was of the opinion that we are all agree that market is not always buying.
they might just not be buying from us, but they are buying.
Yeah.
So,
So
go ahead.
so wherein when you look at the leadership team, when you look at the board, right, and the narrative which has been shared by different team members, especially in terms of keeping the activity based kind of reporting to the leadership. So, and they getting rewarded. If a salesperson go and say, I can make sales to the market, and there are no cycles, and uh, I believe those kind of salespeople are being liked by the leadership team, because they see, there's a energy which has been there, which has been showed by the sales team. But what is your take when you have this kind of narrative? How do you kind of identify activity from momentum? What should be what is your viewpoint here?
Sure. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear. we are always buying is a statement because you're always selling. And when you're selling, I was talking about selling an idea versus selling a solution. And it's a big distinction. So the market may not be buying all the time, but you're always selling every time. And either you sell an idea, which is going to help you in the future. You're always selling relationship as per Dean. I just want to make sure that my context is very clear, because I don't want people to lose energy or misunderstand my context, right? Which is critical. It's a play on words. What is even more important though is that, if you think about, and I think Dean, there was an amazing allegory you came up with. I want to just drill into that a bit. If your goal is to make revenue and you're measuring your success by the amount of LinkedIn posts you do. Now, Dean is very smart. Dean does the volume. Yes, Deal leads with smart. But at the end of the day, Deal is very smart to know that if my 100 pieces of noise are not delivering at least $10 revenue, then what's the point of doing all that noise? And I think this leads into this conversation. At the end of the day, we need to understand that we are rewarding for confusion because we are actually celebrating what I call output-based indicators. So what this means is that what's the pipeline? How big is your pipeline? Show me the count of emails sent. How many dials have you made? How many meetings have you booked? It's just interesting, isn't it, Vish? We have an entire system and methodology whereby we are listening to transcripts. We are like listening to conversations. We're trying to do this analysis, that analysis. And everyone nods, yeah, this is momentum. We get it. If I'm going to my neighbor's house and you see me standing on a treadmill, you'll understand one thing. You see a lot of caloric burn, but am I getting to my neighbor's house? No. And I think this is the strategic mistake that most companies make all the time, right? One, we have this magical belief that companies are constantly buying. The reality is that market demand is never uniformly distributed, right, Vish? It's lumpy. And you said it earlier, right? It sounds, and that's the whole premise of the discussion. Now, let's ask a question. If it is not uniformly distributed, then why are we assuming that our resource and our effort is uniformly distributed? You need to start measuring things that matter for what you are trying to do at that point, right? If your pipeline is very clear that you're not going to make the number for this quarter, then why do you keep asking the same wash and rinse repeat question? It's like me buying bottles of shampoo and my wife is asking me, why are you buying bottles of shampoo when technically you just need one drop a day, right? So these are the fun things that I watch, right? You got to stop celebrating the rep who is simply stuffing the pipeline with unqualified deals, because you celebrate that. You actually give spiffs and bonuses for the first one to book, get 10 bookings by Wednesday. If you get 10 bookings by Wednesday, I'm going to give you $500 reward. Oh, that's awesome. I come from an era where people used to say, you book the 10, awesome. But if 3 convert from that, I'm going to give you $5,000, not $500. So coming from that mindset, you just tell you that there's something going on here. So what happens is that when you see, sales reps coming on stage and being awarded for what I call noise, the award for best deal of the year goes to Suresh because Suresh made a $2 million deal that we thought we had lost. When you think about it, we were actually losing the deal because of Suresh. Suresh got saved because his team came in and actually helped him put that deal together. But unfortunately, the team can't take the credit because the system only rewards Suresh because it's his account, it's his deal, it's his CRM entry. Let's be pragmatic here. But the reason why companies have to reward Suresh is because it looks judicious, right, Dean? The guy that got the biggest deal has to win the award, but the context is missing. The context is absolutely missing. That's how I would just give caution, because the question is so powerful. Are we rewarding, reality? Are we, mistaking, activity momentum? And who's rewarded? I still believe that the wrong people get rewarded for the wrong notions because we have not defined what do we want to support, which is fantastic. In a business where we reward based on quantifiable numbers, right? We still make these mistakes. It's like, people dieting. They will, you can be overweight, you can have body fat of 38%, but people still justify how good they look. That's something I never understood. People with great numbers who understand numbers hate numbers on a weighing machine. Why? Because we're human, and that translates into everything we do. Back to you, Vish.
Yeah. Thank you, Deepak. So, as we kind of recap this segment, the story emerging here is simple but uncomfortable. Buyers live in a lumpy and uneven cycles, and many leadership narratives still pretend demand is flat, constant, and always available. The tension is exactly how organizations end up chasing motion instead of true momentum, as mentioned by Deepak. Even when we are rewarding people, we probably chasing motion and not the true momentum. We have got a couple of comments here. Rajiv has shared a few comments. I do agree with Deepak that market is always buying. The only gap is we are not able to discover it. That's a good point, and his point continues here. There are tangible needs and there are untangible pains, which eventually converts into needs, and hence buying is always there. So thank you, Rajiv, for sharing these insights here. So let's move to the next segment, which is, and before I move, see if you have any more questions, any comments, feel free to share your questions and comments in the comments box. One thing you would be say if you are truly believed only 5 or 15% of the market was ready in any given quarter, or if you believe that you're facing internal alignment for reaching out, or for even seeing the buyers uh, uh, demand, or is the market always buying, that kind of misalignment which has been there in your within your organization. If you see some of these concerns, then do share your views here. We'll be more than happy to call out those views, as that will help all the listeners who have joined us today. So let me move to the next segment, which is identifying discovery and signal, and also look at signal intelligence. We briefly touched upon signal intelligence earlier. Aditi did mention about signal intelligence. But here now we move from why to how you actually know when a buyer is becoming ready. From the buyer side, readiness shows up in behavior long before it shows up in your CRM. And more stakeholders join internal conversation. They ask sharper, more specific questions. They start comparing vendors, scrutinizing technical details, and sharing materials internally to build a business case. And from the supplier side, from the CEO side, or revenue leader side, that should show up as a system, not just the intuition of a few good reps. So knowing when an account is becoming ready is um, is a leadership decision, and not a side effect of whatever tools happen to be purchased. So the problem most organizations have it is not a lack of data, but a gap between detecting intent and acting on it with the speed and precision. So Aditi, if I ask you a question in this segment, who owns knowing when a customer is becoming ready, and what breaks when two functions claim that ownership simultaneously? Deepak did touch upon this in his response in the previous segment, but I would like to hear your view in terms of how this tug of war feels like for the buyer, and what it costs from a CEO's perspective, when actually nobody is clearly accountable for turning signals into conversations.
Absolutely. I feel that and strongly feel that the biggest unlock here is that we stop treating discovery like a sales call moment, like it is
Hmm.
part of the sales cycle, and start treating it as an organizational capability, right? Because there are multiple functions involved that are actually assessing it. It should be a discovery system rather than just a moment in the sales call journey, and when I say that, see, there are field executives, there is sales, there is customer success. What they do is they capture real conversation, contextual insights, and they share that as a signal dump. 10 minutes, no formatting, just raw insights pushed into one channel. You know, just as an example, three customers said that their audit cycle is going to, come in early this year. That's a timing
Hmm.
trick. Apart from the field discovery people, there is digital discovery. Now that works parallel, that should work parallel, which is the marketing and the product, the teams that track behavioral data, whether it is coming from content patterns, feature usages, website flows, community conversations. Their job turns messy signals into patterns. Now,
Hmm.
for example, if someone downloads a case study and immediately checks for pricing in the next 24 hours, that is not interest, that is readiness,
Hmm.
right? And finally, like you mentioned, is the leadership. the decision making layer in every organization. This group looks at patterns across fields and digital insights, and then drives on what counts as a readiness event. What action needs to be triggered, who responds, and in how much time. So if
Mm.
IT joins the thread, we quickly trigger a proposal in 48 hours, right? This avoids the classic, like Dean mentioned, the sales versus marketing tug of war, because everyone in this model, or in this approach towards capacity, building a capacity, everyone owns their own layer, right? They may
Yeah.
be collaborative in action, but they are very federated in decision making, if we see that way, all these three
Mm.
layers. So when companies allow to follow this layered system approach, two things happen. Intent stops getting stuck in silos,
Mm.
and teams respond to readiness within days than in quarters, which I have personally observed it does happen. And
Yeah.
this is where the precision from for revenue comes from. And yeah, that's what I strongly feel.
You're right. In fact, I've also observed. So sales would not even rely on what marketing can bring them as leads, right? So
Absolutely.
even though marketing might have seen some bit of signals, either website traffic or
Yeah,
people downloading white paper or an ebook, sales do not consider that
as an important
as a
signal.
good quality leads at all.
Yeah.
And then I remember there was one CEO who mentioned, we see lead leakages in our organization because our sales and marketing are not speaking between
Hmm.
themselves, and that is actually a big problem. So they are investing a lot in terms of their marketing system. They have invested in marketing automation. They have invested in in webinars and building white papers, so on and so forth. But as soon as the marketing gets some signals, either in terms of the lead form that has been filled by the prospects, sales do not consider as a reliable signals. Anyways, that's a good conversation. Let me move to Deepak. Deepak, there are, of course, Aditi also talked about some indicators, but what specific leading indicators reliably precede qualified engagement in this B2B ecosystem, and how fast does organizations respond when they appear? So in fact, some of the organizations follow lag indicators too most of the times, and they sometimes are not able to think of leading indicators. So what is your viewpoint here?
So I think Aditi touched upon quite a lot of very good, solid inputs, right? The biggest indicator that I look for is the quality of your discovery. Nish, I want everyone to just think about a doctor's visit. You go sit
Mm.
down with the doctor and you have just paid a truckload of money to get at least 15, 30 minutes with him, right? And he now starts off by saying, I see your blood pressure is X over Y. High blood pressure, this is what's going to go wrong, blah, blah, blah. Then he moves on and says, I see you're weighing this much. 20 minutes later, he's still stuck on the chart. There is no prognosis, diagnosis of any sorts going on. He's not even asking you, what's your pain? Why are you here? What have you tried till now? How has it worked? Is the pain less or higher when you lie on your side? We haven't even got there yet. So for me, that's a big, big, big ratio that you look for. Are your teams doing the discovery process, the balance in the right way or not? For me, now there comes the question that ET question asked, right? Who is responsible for knowing when a customer is ready? This is where the fun starts. And I'll give a classic example, and I've got data on this. So yes, there is intentionality. A person went to the website, saw a white paper, downloaded the white paper, and then also the next day went and looked at your pricing structure for some of your services. And we say there's intentionality. From a marketing point of view, wish that's a check. But here's the
Mm.
reality from a sales point of view. It's intent, but that intent will not convert to pipeline because there's other things that come in, and that's where sales fits in, right? Now the magic is that everyone has got the right answer, but the right answer exists in silos. You now need to get to a point where you start looking at trigger events which are consistent across, that are relevant across. And that is how you're now going to make sure. So it's like saying, I'd like to design a product that appeals to 50% of the people. That immediately tells you your design criteria will have to be different now. The same way, when you're looking at trigger events, look for a smorgasbord or a set of ratios that will at least appeal to the larger majority. And that's when the
Mm.
magic starts occurring. So teams that lead are typically looking at trigger events, which are like role changes, funding, strategic shifts, right? These are powerful. Behavior. Yes, I downloaded something. Another behavior is I downloaded something else. Putting those two together, you take the probability from 30% to now 80% of intentionality, right, Aditi? That was the word you used. These are powerful metrics because now what you're doing is you're creating momentum versus interest. Momentum is what defines greatness, right? So
Mm.
deal scores, CRM probability stages are all mathematical ways of trying to say what I'm trying to say in very simplistic way, right? So for me, the biggest gap that occurs, however, is the handoff. We have all these
Mm.
people now doing things which are all perfect for that, but how do you ensure that the handoff? This is why I'm asking leadership to look at the handoff. Look at your tools. I am surprised still. We have CRMs, we have AI by the company, we have AI by the individual. That's a mess, guys. Where's so you now have a salesperson using AI and Apollo to do something else. You have the
Mm.
marketing guys using their own interpretation of it. Where's the cohesive layer? And I can assure you, there was a reason why ERP systems became so powerful because they brought cohesion. And now look at what's happening. We've now got a decentralized tech stack, which is going to take us into what I call silo greatness, but corporate level failure. So I just want caution on that front. So I think it's just very important. Noticing what's going on, noticing it sooner is something where AI can really help us. But what I'm asking
Mm.
for is a cohesive across the board approach that brings intentionality, as Aditi put it, as well as other things like the softer side of things, right? Putting it all together. And forget this, discovery is not a calendar event. I agree with Aditi. It's not. It reflects in your calendar in the same way that brushing your teeth is awesome. The question is, what are you brushing it with? If you brush your teeth with water, the activity is correct, but is the outcome going to be so? That's where the change has to occur. Back to you, Vish.
No, thank you, Deepak. No, in fact, these are some good metaphors that you shared, and we have received while we were having this conversation, we received a couple of questions from Moin and Deepak, and also a comment from Moin. So I'll take these questions and comment after my question to Dean, because I want to have continuing this conversation. We talked about signal intelligence. We talked about how these signals, what are the leading indicators that we can look at, and we also touched briefly upon how these signals are dying. So, Dean, we continuing this conversation here. If you give a spot, I mean, if you kind of put a spotlight on where actually these signals die, what are whether these gets ignored either in the system or during handoff, um, in the tool stack, or on crowded calendars that privilege meetings over momentum. So, what is your viewpoint here?
No, it's a great question, and I think it will help us address a couple of the questions as well. Because as you know, I live in building out the sales process. Every step, making sure we have the right go-to-market strategy built in. But each step of the funnel, not only are you doing the activities, are you doing the right activity, and are you doing it the right way, and do you have the measurables? So when I look at guesswork to readiness, the first part is in the qualification. I watch people overqualify, misread, make assumptions, and it's almost like they're wishing and hoping it's not really there yet. So I think right out of the gate, people diagnose and read incorrectly, and that part is the death, right? On the follow-up, I think people try to follow up too aggressively. A great example is this. On LinkedIn, people reach out to connect, and you connect, and then some people turn right around and want to meet with you or try to sell to you. I never respond to those people. Okay. And if I do, it'll be a month or two later. They lose me at hello because they're not looking, they don't know anything about me. They're not investing any time. They're just trying to talk about them and their product, right? I think messaging is, when I think about customer pain, people identify the opportunity, they identify the customer pain, but they don't continue to talk about that with the client and let that develop naturally. And I think in management, you're tracking activity, not necessarily looking at the signals that are leading to progression in the pipeline or maybe lack of progression. And I know that kind of touches on one of the questions, but ultimately, when I look at this, Vish, I look at relationships inside the funnel and then the sales leadership. But the one thing I know that we've all done a lot of the testing, like Colby or Herman or any of those others. One of the things that changes dynamically with all of these signals is when people get under pressure, they react differently. Even the things that people have done well, they know to do, they're not under pressure, and that dynamically changes. So that would be the part when I look over at a couple of the questions there. It's really getting inside the activity and making sure that you're nurturing the progression or lack of, and really understanding why that's occurring positively or not.
Correct, Dean. So, in fact, you touched upon the right points. And when we look at the evolution of tools, right? Deepak also mentioned about AI layer. When we have these tools, that could actually enable us not to let the signals die. Because if the signals die, there's the moment when the buyer's initial interest just fades. If you do not respond to those signals. However, if we can leverage some of these tools, which are powered by AI or within CRM, if we capture these signals and if we kind of qualify these signals with further steps, then that might be a better way to kind of address the buying signals and not just ignore them. Because if you are ignoring them, then the CEOs would see that these are the silent pipeline leakage happens again before we are kind of missing the targets. So yes, there are more disadvantages if we ignore signals or if we let signals die during the handoff or during the tool stack. But let me now come to a couple of questions that we have received here. We have received one question from two questions from Moin, which is, how are you planning to bring up low performers if not by rewarding their small accomplishments? Deepak, you want to address?
Absolutely. So, here's a fun thing. Let's bring psychology into this. We tell our children when they do something good, we go and say, here's a gold star for you, stick it on their head. Because that simple thing that works for a child is actually what works for a human being also.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole group and generation of parents that still believe that slapping a child is still the best way to enforce discipline. The reality is that you can do both if you want, right? I'm not stopping you from that. I mean, I don't want to do it because I have adult sons in any case. If I'm slapping an adult son, that's just something wrong with me. Psychological safety is the great thing that you achieve by doing these small wins, and you do it consistently. I had an ex-boss that used to drive me mad, Vish, because if you booked a meeting with someone that is very difficult to get into someone's diary, like Dean's Magic, he would ring the bell. Initially, I used to get irritated because that bell rang 12 times a day. But then I watched and I looked around. When the bell rang for me, I felt good. Then I realized that as the bell rings, individually each person feels good. Now you have a cumulative team upliftment effect. This is important. Recognition hits hard because dopamine hits hard, right? Remember, and that's why you want to turn these behavioral hits of dopamine into habits. It's like Pavlov's dog. Every time the bell rings, he salivates because he knows food is coming. Trust me, human beings are animals. We keep forgetting it. Just because you invented AI, it doesn't mean that you're some different thing, right? Earn praise, give praise which is specific against an activity, not generic. That's how I would like to answer that question. I always tell people, it's not about the work I do that needs to get recognized. It's about managers seeing work that needs to be recognized and recognize it on the spot. People tell me I'm very busy, Deepak. I can't spend 50% coaching. Then step down, become an individual contributor. If you chose to become a sales leader, you inherited that notion. You have to. And if you don't mind, since that was Moin's question, Moin also had a second question. I just want to kind of lean into that there. Managers also have a habit of focusing quite a lot on the top achievers and saying, let's do ride-alongs to make sure you bring this top deal in because it's very critical for the funnel. And to Moin's question, lifting 3 out of 10 to 7 out of 10, it's that middle 50% which needs the most attention, mathematically as well as psychologically. You psychologically lift that, you've done a mathematical job of lifting everyone up there. And that's why, Moin, I think it's extremely critical for managers to look at the time that they're investing and looking at mathematically where they should be investing it. Look, I am a big supporter of the low 20% also. But the reality in sales, unfortunately, is that 20% will deliver 80% of the revenue. Now the question is, how do you get the remaining 20%? And my response is that'll come from the middle 50%. So if you want to make sure the team rises together, make the 50% rise. That's how I would answer Moin's question as well. Back to you, Vish.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me move to a question from Deepak. Okay. Which tools are effective to pick the signals from digital platforms? Tools which are cost effective and efficient in picking signals from noise. Aditi, Dean, would you like to take up this question?
Yeah, I think when we say this, I guess I'm not sure I understand the context of the question. I mean, there's a lot of different tools that focus on specific tasks within the sales process. I'm not sure there's the best tool, if you're looking holistically, is really looking at the sales process funnel step by step, and then making sure that you have that automated into the CRM and that you have the right dashboards so that you are proactively seeing the data and managing it. The worst thing you could do is not have that set up and automated, because then you're looking at old news or reactive, and you're probably operating from reports. But I think the better you can deal with live data and being predictive, but also going back to status quo, when you find that you really may not have the right measurables or KPIs or the right step, you got to have the courage to say, hey, I think I missed that one. Let's tweak this. And the best way to do that is to, going back to what Deepak was saying, is listen to your people and help them and encourage them on the small wins. Unfortunately, Deepak, I was one of those children that would get in a lot of trouble. And my mother was a school teacher. And what she learned was, nothing was more painful. She would send us out to the hickory stick or the bush to get our own hickory stick. She would then hit it on our legs. It didn't hit hard, but here's what it did. It made little whelps on your leg, right?
Yes.
She always only spanked us on the day before the next day. She knew that we had 3 boys. We would be going into PE to play with our friends. Then our friends would see that we had a little hickory stick whelps,
Yeah.
and they'd make fun of us, right? So that was the way my mom taught us. It wasn't a lot of pain. It was more the pain the next day when your friends saw the results. So unfortunately, I was one of those kids that got in trouble, Deepak. But I think the positive reinforcement, and a lot of people think they need to be big things. They don't. I think people knowing that you sincerely care about them and trying to do the right things to help them as a leader, those things will go further than anything else.
Great. Thank you, Dean. Aditi, do you have any comment, especially on the tools?
Yes. So I wouldn't really like to recommend any tool because every organization and company has their own budgets. That there are certain free tools also available. You can ping me, I will help you up with those. However, the intention is not the tool that you pick. The intention is how connected it is to the rest of the channels that your sales team is operating on. Be it social media, be it your emails, be it your CRM or any other, or your website. How omni-channel does that tool help you attain that visibility, the converged visibility? So look for a tool which gives you a converged visibility in terms of a dashboard, so that you don't have to visit 10 different places to get to one ideation. Your decision making process needs to become simplified, and whichever tool helps you give you that holistic image, that is the tool for you.
Thank you, Aditi. I'd also like to add here. So when we look at different channels which are associated with marketing, right? So whether it's website, whether it's social media, whether it's email marketing, whether it's cold calling, every channel has a way of identifying signals, identifying way to kind of figure out responses from your buyers, from your target audience. And there are tools which have been worked out for each of these channels. So it's important for you to understand, and I'm addressing it to uh, Deepak Mehta. So if, if you have identified certain channels through which you are building your GTM motions, focus on those tools that are aligned with those GTM channels. If you are driving your motions through website or through digital or LinkedIn, then focus on tools that can give you signals from these channels. Similarly, if you are, say running webinars or events or, any other sales motion, then you might have to look at signals from that perspective. You must have tools to also capture those signals in your system so that you can take a step moving forward. I think there's a comment from 𝗤𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃, and she did mention she's from, oh, sorry, 𝗤𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃. See, at Optics Data Solution, we automate the extraction of clean real-time web and API data, helping data analytics and engineering teams move faster and make smarter decisions. So I think Kirti is talking about some of these solutions which can help getting these signals captured in a system. So thank you, Kirti, for sharing this comment, and thank you, Deepak and Moin, for sharing your comments and questions. I hope you got the answers that you were looking for. Now let's quickly move to the next segment, which is the last segment in referral systems, which is a critical one because that can help you to design a competitive moat for your business. So most don't start in, most of these buyers or when you talk about this demand actually comes from when buyers are finally ready to move. So this demand don't start in your funnel, they start in the network: friends, former colleagues, peer communities, partners, and customers they trust. And when you look at from a buyer's lens, the safest move is usually who do people like us recommend rather than who send the best cold email. And when you look at from the CEO's lens, the supplier lens, that means referrals, partner co-selling, and community are not fringe channels. They can become a design compounding mode if treated as core motions. So yet in most operating models, referrals are random, partner motions are under resourced, and community is an afterthought. This segment is about what changes when advocacy and co-selling are engineered by design. So, Aditi, if I ask you this question, what would have to be true about a product and experience for customers to invite peers without prompts, incentives or script? So, since you have worked with product organization earlier, so what is that product experience that you can that that can actually influence the referrals or referral engine?
Out of all the questions, this one is going to be my favorite question, and I think wish you knew that already. So, customers refer someone only when they feel genuinely helpful, that whatever they used, the product or the service that they used was genuinely helpful, and they feel emotionally safe to recommend. Because when you're recommending a resource as a referral, sometimes you feel it is your own reputation that is at stake at the time of that referral. And the same ideology goes by when you are referring a product, because you don't want to hear tomorrow that, oh, XYZ recommended me this, it did not work this way, that the operational excellence was not there, this, that, etc. In today's world, trust is the currency. Though we are moving ahead, we are diluting that ideation with AI. I'm not against the fast paced environment where the technology is pacing, but we are not asking the question that should we be doing X thing. We are only getting into can we do it? That's where we are all addressing towards. We are not thinking about the why behind it, the should we behind it. And trust is built only and only through authenticity, meaning your experience is honest, simple, consistent, even when nobody is watching. Behind closed doors, if somebody feels that whatever they are doing, whatever their product is doing, whatever conversation they had today with their clients, that experience is honest and authentic and simple, then that is a great referral point for any organization or product or service to work on to. You know, when products grow through referrals, there are plenty of ways in which you may feel referrals can work. However, the easiest, or the what I felt when I thought about this subject, I felt that one thing is that if it is able to remove friction in your system, it is an easy referral point for anybody. Say onboarding was very very clear. If somebody is able to give you an onboarding experience like iPhone, then you don't need to ask for a referral. It will automatically come from that individual. If you're able to build an emotional relief when your product removes somebody's stress, somebody's embarrassment, somebody's confusion. There are a lot of scenarios in emergency responses where XYZ system failed, camera feed went halted, etc. These are embarrassing situations for a lot of, I don't want to, a lot of communities, right? And when we are able to simplify this, nobody shares features. They only share the relief that they got out of the experience. So if your product saves somebody those 3 hours, on a Monday morning, they will definitely be talking about it in their internal WhatsApp groups, etc. You will not have to nudge them or push them to have a conversation. And lastly, you know there is this I wish I knew it earlier moment, and I think all of us have had this related to some or the other product or service that we have used. I wish I knew this before, because it solves some real problems for you faster
Yeah.
and smarter than you expected it to happen. If you engineer advocacy in this way, you will not require incentivizing anybody for a referral. Your product authentic experience is something that is going to speak for itself, and referral isn't a tactic, it's a natural outcome of being trustworthy. And I strongly go by this. It has, and it will definitely, if not today, give you an outcome, and you shall all cherish it. That's all I have to contribute to this one.
No, thank you, Aditi. And I like the statement, trust is the currency. And that is true for when you're working on a B2B ecosystem. So, Deepak, I'll ask you about this partner co-selling by design. So, if you have partners and who are working together with you on co-selling motions, what would they stop you from doing, and what would they demand you start now? So, how do you address this question here?
Very simply, in the interest of time, because we're also beyond the scheduled time, I just want to make it very impactful. One of the things that I get feedback from partners is that sometimes I get the feeling that because you allowed me to put your logo again next to mine, it's become a nice logo exchange. But where's the idea exchange? And I always laugh when I hear that, because that's a powerful message. When your logo exchange is becoming more important than your idea exchange, you have a problem right there, guys. This is like in any relationship, Dean. If you and I have to go back to the contract to see what we were supposed to do, the relationship is in trouble already.
Yep.
Here's what is really interesting. Magnanimity. I gave you 10 leads, therefore you should be grateful. I'm sorry, you gave me 10 very bad deals. Why should I be grateful? So let's make sure that when we're giving deals, we're giving deals that matter and count. We have to have criteria, very, very smart criteria on that. And I just love it. I hear companies standing up and saying for the collaborating partner of the year award, and they give it to someone, and collaboration is then defined as how many deals you won with them, which makes me fall over laughing, because collaboration is not about deal measurement. Collaboration is about thought leadership. The two of you coming together did what for the customer, and how did it change That's collaboration. But I still watch it. We collaborated on 10 deals and we won 7. Therefore, the win rate was 70%. So this is the best collaboration. It's the best sales engine. It's not a collaboration. But here's what's really interesting. We measure partners on things that excite us. And partners spend very little time on measuring things that excite you. They want you to measure them on things that excite them. So stop doing that. Once you figure that out, your partnership program will go through the roof. And I work with some of the most intricately designed organizations, very complex, but spending a lot of time. And Aditi, you raised it earlier. When you look at sailing signals and stuff, the channel, in my opinion, is extremely critical. And we've brought this section at the end, but this should actually be one of the most important aspects of enterprise selling, right? Which most big companies sell through channel partners. 70% of most of the work that I've done has been through channel partners. This is one of the topics which is the least spoken about and requires the most utmost respect, because people have trusted you. Dean, you just signed a deal with Avenir, right? They trust you, therefore they came to you, right? And that trust is paramount. And I know Dean is going to do his best to preserve that trust with that relationship. And to me, that's ultimately, so he'll put the systems, the attitude, and the behavior and the measurements to enable that trust to sustain. That's how I would answer your question, Vish, in the interest of time.
Thank you, Deepak. So, Dean, last question to you. Where do these referrals originate in any business today? And what does that reveal about who actually trusts you enough to stake their reputation?
No, it's great. And I'm going to kind of do an extension of what Deepak just said as well. But to me, this is the most important thing that we've talked about today, or at least in my world. I don't know about everyone out there, but I bet Deepak does. I know I do. I probably get 10 or 15 people a day on LinkedIn or email demand gen saying, hey, we can help you increase your leads and your pipeline. I don't want leads. I don't need leads. And what I mean by that is I'm far past a lead. I'm looking at an introduction. So when I looked at this question, you start thinking about what does that mean from existing clients? Deepak touched on it, like strategic partners, pure SMB owners, past buyers or current customers, buyers, networking groups, communities, and even other vendors, or, Avner would be a great example, but productivity partners that we need to put in front of our clients. The reality is I came back to something I learned from one of my toolkits is sales acceleration. And what they teach you when you first start is you need to really learn how to listen. And it's almost like they're saying you need a hearing aid, which means zip your lips and quit talking, right? I can tell you, I use 𝗏𝗏. When I started this 3 years ago, my talk rate was 79%, which is absolutely appalling. Now my talk rate is about 19%. And I think the best way to listen is to shut up, right? But here's why listening is important. You need to learn about the other person. Once you learn about them, I can tell you, I have been blown away. I've been able to help people in ways I never dreamed possible, but I would have not known that if I didn't get to know them and understood about what's important to them and where they need help. So I think the key is then the servant part comes in. And I used to talk this, I didn't live it. Anyone that knows me in Atlanta, Georgia, they know I live this daily. I give more, I'll give more, I will help. I do not expect one thing back in return. I don't want compensation. I'm not expecting you to do anything to help me. I think it always will come back around. It may be from a different source, a different person. That's okay. But just be a good person and help people. I think when you do that, you're earning that trust and you're earning that relationship. But then the work really starts. You then have to educate them on what you do, because most people, they hear what we say, they don't really understand it. They don't really know how it applies to them. So you've got to break that down, and they really need to understand what you do and how you help customers. Then you've got to really think about their service and their customers and put it in relationship, and then you got to break it down more. Do they really know how to help you? Do they know how to introduce you? And I can tell you, earlier this year, my 2025 goal, I set up appointments with what I considered my top 100 people in my referral network. And I wanted to know, did I really know how to help them? And did they really know how to help me? These are people where the trust is already there. It was a little embarrassing because it was amazing how many times people wanted to help you and they really didn't know how to do it. But I think the other part is you have to then nurture that relationship, Vish. Constant touch points. And last week was a great example. It's a good and bad scenario. The good part is a gentleman saw my newsletter. He opened it. He immediately thought of me, and an active opportunity with a client has given me a recommendation. I've met with the customer. I'm going to be onboarding that customer. The bad news is he's had this opportunity and was trying to find someone for probably the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Until he saw my newsletter, he had forgotten me because I have not nurtured that relationship the way I should have in the last 6 months. So, I think this is the part that it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of investment, but you really have to put the time in and you will get the return from it.
Thank you, Dean. So quickly, just to recap, and what Dean was saying. So when buyers are finally ready, they don't ask who contacted us most. They ask who do we trust and what did people like us actually use and succeed with. So that is not random luck. It is the output of deliberate design in your product, what Aditi talked about, in your relationships, what Deepak and Dean covered, and your extended partner ecosystem, which is very critical. As Deepak mentioned, most of the 70% of sales actually comes from partner ecosystem. So it all depends on how you have designed this entire ecosystem of product, relationship, and partner. So in this chat, we have covered three aspects. One is the discovery, the signal intelligence, and also referrals, which can actually be a competitive mode as we move forward. So from the buyer's lens, it means fewer random touches and more help at the right moment in their cycle. From the CEO's lens, it means cleaner forecast, better resource allocation, and less number of activities metrics that buyer experience as noise. But if you want a deeper dive for your organization, this is what we help leadership teams to do: build readiness-driven revenue system that feel like help to buyers, not more noise. And if you want to have an expert opinion about your systems, you can reach out to any of the speakers that we have today on this session. You can reach out to them directly on LinkedIn, or you can send us a mail, and we would be more than happy to connect you with them. So before we close, I'd like to also mention about our next session. We are doing it on December 17th. And this is a more, we are tackling another provocative question here. The AI product gold rush, is the IT services business being doomed? As you see, 78% of organizations now use AI, up from 55% just a year ago. So nearly 90% of notable AI models now come from industry, not academia. So the IT services landscape is undergoing seismic shifts, as you observe daily, in terms of the layoffs, in terms of the changes that are taking place. The deal sizes are going down. So here in this session, we'll explore whether traditional IT services model can survive, adapt, or thrive. So mark your calendars. Ritika has already shared a link to this session. We'll see you on December 17th. But thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to Deepak, Aditi, and Dean for joining in this session and sharing their insights with our audience. Thank you all for joining us. See you on 17th December.